brought to you in part by Howard Products. Since 1969, Howard Products has made a wide range of polishes and wood finish restorers. Their hit products, such as Restore Finish and Feed and Wax, have been used in the vintage audio industry for decades, enabling vintage audio enthusiasts to keep their equipment looking as good as they sound. If you want to find out more about Howard Products or to take a look at their product range to see what you can use to bring your equipment back to life, check out www.howardproducts.com. You ain't done yet. This is the Vintage Series podcast here on eCoustics. I am your moderator, Mitch Anderson from Black Circle Radio, and also producer of eCoustics audio content here. Patting myself on my back a little bit too hard. You probably heard it in the mic. And with us as our hosts, we have Jeremy Sikora at Budget Audio Filer, and we have Eric Pye at Audio Love YYC. In this episode, we are going to be talking about what maybe can easily considered maybe the twilight zone of vintage equipment. It's an area you want to enter into, but a lot of times it's one that you don't know quite how to find your way out of or how you got there in the first place. Because there has been along this vintage journey, whether you're talking about consumer audio, which you would hear playback in your home, or pro audio, or the bridge of both, so much innovation occurring at all times in these eras, and companies taking risks and releasing stuff to the public for better or for worse. And so Jeremy, Eric started the last episode, and I'd like to start with you on this one. And when it comes to vintage audio and the word oddity, where does your mind go?
So home.
Yes.
Home. And this has been the eCoustics podcast. Remember to subscribe.
It goes to the main rack, to the basement, to the digital oddities and well, not so much digital, but vintage ones. There were a lot of them in the 70s. I think the 70s is where they really started to kind of creep out, and we saw kind of two different versions of it. We
no relationship to LSD whatsoever.
I'm going to have to say there may be a correlation there, especially with the reverb units. So maybe we'll start there. So
sure,
that was both a quote sound enhancer and a visual experience, and for some reason they tied rainbows into those, and they made several different versions of that. I actually have.
We talking about the Sansui ones.
I think every brand had one. I mean, it seemed like for some reason you wanted one in those systems, and those were probably what the late 70s.
The rainbow ones, were those because I have the picture in my head of the rainbow meter. Was that Pioneer or Sansui?
That's a TIAC. Yeah. So TIAC tape decks had a rainbow meter, and they had other units that had them as well. So anything to do with a rainbow meter, which shows either the volume or the sound. Do they add a lot of audio that you want to hear? Most likely not. but the fun thing about most of the things that we're talking about, actually all of the visual stuff today, you can use it as just a visual. You can take it out of the actual sound line. You can attach it to a tape out, and you can just watch it. So that's what makes it kind of fun. All of the visual stuff that I have is all connected to just either a line out or not part of the actual sound. So it doesn't actually alter the sound. It's there visually.
Okay. Now I'm following now. When I was saying rainbow meter, I was talking about the reverb units that had the graph that changed colors, and you were talking about VUs.
No, we both actually. So they had both rainbow VUs on the TIAC, and the reverb units almost all had the rainbow, and they had them in all different kinds, and
Dude, I didn't know that. That's awesome.
They're just bonkers. They're yeah.
Well, but you use your VUs. They're in your videos or your posts or whatever, like pretty frequently. And I've got VUs all over the place in the studio here. But do you, in your rig, do you find the VU meter to be something that is helpful rather than just aesthetic?
Yes. So just today, I had a loose wire on a loose cable connection. The VU sorted that out and immediately. So it was very, very simple to see. I have a channel down, and obviously you can hear it down, but you can see exactly that needs to be that cable needs to be jiggled. So
yes,
it's a jiggle indicator.
Yes.
Deoxit.
It's an interesting thing about VUs because everyone seems to like them, and I have this unit here, which is a Radio Shack unit, which has both analog and LED, and it has a
that's
switch.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's got a switch between 2 watts and 200 watts, and you can just hook it up to your speaker Bs. So if you have one speaker, you can just hook it up too. But it works very, very well when you have an A and B speaker out, and you can just turn it on and off.
Can you run the analog needle VU and the LEDs simultaneously?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that's so hot.
So a Luxman, a high-end Luxman, had both the analog and the LEDs, and this little unit, which sold from the Radio Shack catalog, the APM 200, did the exact same thing for probably a fraction of it, and you can hook it up to any system. So it's interesting. VUs, I think, have a very real place. Yamaha slowly brought them back. So, and NAD with their commemorative, there they are, VU meters. So
and don't forget Macintosh with all of their power amps too, right?
Macintosh, they never left. They have held their VU DNA so strongly that they sell a clock that has the hour and the minutes as a VU meter,
and even put them in a digital version in a Jeep Grand Cherokee.
Yes,
that's holding. You're right. That's holding on to it.
Yeah,
Go ahead. Sorry.
No. I was just gonna go wander off to the next spatial and dynamic expanders.
Let's hear about these.
Now, right next to the LSD tray.
Yes. So these, I wish I had one of the articles to read, because as you read it, it tells this story on how it's going to magically change the music to almost like the artist just didn't do a good job, and this box is going to fix that. So there's tons of those. I actually have one, a BSR one. It's called a spatial enhancer. Of course, it's got a rainbow meter on it too, so you can see it working. It doesn't work very well at all. It actually sounds pretty horrible. But this is just that model, and I know Pioneer made them. So these weren't even fringe companies doing this.
Not at all.
Yeah. These were companies trying to get. How can we get 2-channel a little bit? How can we get the sound stage? How can we make it feel? How can we kind of encompass the listener electronically, and then how can we market it?
It's like, I kind of see it that way, but I also kind of see it as like, what can we get people to buy? Like, how far can we push our ideas that people will be like, okay, like, well, Pioneer's putting it out, so I guess it's got to do something. Like, I'm in. Like, I want to know that mindset. Like the first adopter of like the Pioneer, spatial enhancer, or like reverb unit for home listening. What was that mind. I mean, to be the first on the, like, first in line, like, gotta get it. Was there a line behind him? I don't know. I just think that stuff is incredible.
Well, those were some of the reasons that those instruments have drawn me into it, because there's a lot of science behind it. Like, people put a lot of work into
So much
doing
R&D.
this. And have I heard a lot of benefit? I'm not so sure, but if it has meters, if it has a visual presence to it, and you can see the music as well as hear it, there's certainly an added benefit there. Whether or not you actually want to keep it in the actual part of the sound output, that's up to you.
It just, Eric, I hope that you should get probably a reel-to-reel pretty soon, so you can get back on engineering duty, and we can just rig up a couple of these units to a reel-to-reel chain for you. We can just have ourselves a conversation. If you haven't heard, if you're not getting this reference, then go back to the reel-to-reel episode where you hear about Eric's distinguished career. Engineering debut, exactly.
So I have a question about a gadget that's kind of like you talked about making stereo kind of crazy or whatever, Jeremy. Is it you or your neighbor that has the Sansui quad amplifier?
That is my neighbor, and we were actually playing with that unit about 2 hours ago. So it's very interesting. So quad came in. That's another oddity. That was the industry's way to try to get into surround sound, or some sort of, once again, how to encompass you with sound, how to really enhance your listening experience. So yeah, this is the quads have a front and rear stereo. And there was an attempt at the time to have quad 8 tracks, to have quad vinyl, and to have these separate channels coming out. That really didn't catch on all that much, but Sansui, at the very least, kind of had what I heard tonight with my own ears, kind of the beginnings of I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. It's manufactured surround sound. So they have
like
a way
Dolby
that
Atmos,
kind of, yes, but
of the time.
40 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Analog Atmos.
yeah, taking 2 channels and turning it into 4 to the best of their electrical ability. So yeah, so there's an actual switch that has all these different modes to turn to a left and right input into how many speakers do you want to run with that, and how do you want it to sound.
What was the experience like?
We didn't have all 4 speakers hooked up, but you could distinctly hear a little bit more loudness in some of it. It's most likely similar to the different surround sounds when you were going in from a 2-channel to a 5.1 system later on.
Okay.
Were some better than others? Absolutely. Were they better than 2-channel? I'm not really sure. I think that would be listener preference.
Yeah, I've never ever understood quad stuff.
Yeah, what I find interesting though is that, so back in the 50s, a lot of classical music was recorded in 3-channel. And so a lot of the SACDs that have been produced in later day, they're going back to the original 3-channel tapes and using that. And like, I find it interesting that the Macintosh have a center channel out on a lot of their amplifiers as well. But you've got like the recording in 3-channel, you've got the output in 3-channel, but there's nothing really in that era that was doing the playback in 3-channel, which is kind of weird to me. So yeah, it was this whole kind of like 3-channel, 4-channel kind of fixation in some ways is kind of interesting.
It is very, because there's just so much possibility when you don't have to adhere, and we know this obviously, like we're talking about quad, and I mentioned Dolby Atmos and all that kind of stuff, but I mean, if you gave listener control of a 24 track mix, right, from their home, and you're like, okay, here's your 1 through 12 on and off switches, and there you go, there's your amp, like, have fun. I mean, that would be quite an experience, I think, for a listener. But geez, talk about overwhelming and like unnecessary, maybe. I don't know. But with the quad stuff and with the 3-channel and 7.1 and on and on and on and on, the goal of that is ultimately just to make the listener feel as if they're a part of the process, right? Is my opinion.
Yeah. Which kind of gets us off the toys. Jeremy, any other toys you wanted to bring in?
Just
a few.
The
musicians become the toys at that moment.
So one last one, which starts to get somewhat useful, and then we'll get into equalizers, which are useful. So we talked a lot about stuff that kind of were misses. SAE made a electronic way to remove cracks and hisses from record players, and it had a slide bar, and there's one behind me, so you could adjust it, and then you can go back and forth to hear what it sounds like with this unit on and without it, and it actually does remove some of the crackles that a lot of people complain about vinyl. So when vinyl was kind of main stage, that's what people kind of, I don't like the crackles, I don't like the imperfections there, and this removes those. Do I use it on any of my systems now? I don't, but it does work.
So, Jeremy, on that note, have you ever used the high filter on your Sansui AU999?
I actually don't do the high filter, but sometimes the low.
Okay, because the high filter, if you have a crackly record, can help with that as well.
Yes, that is an absolutely true statement. So who uses an equalizer here?
I do not. I do use the tone controls on my amplifiers, but
that's an EQ. That's an EQ. That's an EQ.
Well, yeah. When I'm thinking equalizers, I'm thinking something with like 5 or 10 or even more different controls that you can put into a nice U shape. And
you're thinking like a graphic, like an outboard graphic.
Yeah.
Like the one from Ferris Bueller.
Yeah, like that. Anyone?
I want one of those real bad.
I use the graphic on my Kenwood. What is the KR1000 Galaxy Commander? I use that graphic sometimes, especially when I want to like feel it. I mean, the bass on there, I've thought about, and I haven't done it yet, but I need to. But I want to bring that amp up into the studio because the low end EQ sounds so sick. Like it's punishing. I love that sound. It's so good. But yeah, I use the EQ on that from time to time. But I don't have any outboard like playback EQs in the listening setup right now. Do you, Jeremy?
I do have two. Yeah. So I have the Luxman. So you can actually dial it into your preferences EQ wise.
And then are you more when you're using the EQs, because like that there are some wacky EQs for sure, but they're so readily available, especially the vintage ones. Like I see them all the time with the the RCA in and outs. You can find them anywhere really. But when you're using your EQ, are you more dialing to ear, or are you, I mean, obviously you're dialing to your ear, that's not what I'm saying, but like, are you like EQing to your room, or are you like EQing the music? Because I think there's a difference there.
I would say it's EQing room and to personal preference. So you may remove some of the bass out of a room if it's just too small, or the echo just doesn't work there. It just muddies up the room. So there are uses outside of just preference and how you want to hear your music.
Yeah, I mean, EQ, I should have worded it differently. So like EQing it to your room and mood, or like setting. I think that's where EQs are the most usable. It's like if you need background music, quote unquote, for a party or something, roll those highs off, baby. Like have some conversation over it.
The bottom line is you can make it sound exactly how you want to.
Yes, you can. Absolutely.
That's it. And it may not be what the artist intended, but it's your room and your equipment that night.
And when you were talking too about the the spatial expanders, and then really quickly you'll get into DBX, not just with the noise reduction stuff, but also they're like over easy compressors that were marketed to consumer grade systems for playback purpose. But when you're getting into those expanders and then the compressors, or that type of stuff, essentially all it's doing is making your music louder at a lower volume, and so it can feel as present as if you're cranking it, but it's doing something. But the full effect, I guess, of the mix at a much lower volume for like nighttime listening without headphones. And so I think that a lot of the outboard equipment, like the EQs, like the reverb units, I think a lot of it was tailored towards people that worked like second shift and like had to go home and their whole house was asleep. And so they had to play their music so quiet that they couldn't get the reverb of their room. And so then, okay, well, I'm going to add a reverb unit, and then I'm going to add a compressor, and then I can come home and I can enjoy my system without waking the house up, because I don't want to listen to headphones. I think that's kind of where some of the Oddity outboard stuff came into place, in my opinion, I guess.
Yeah. We didn't have computers or the internet back then, so stereos were
entertainment.
Yeah.
Right. You got to meet the house where the house is at.
Yeah.
And so if you can make equipment that can do that and sell a few of them, then it's a win. The one piece that I think is my oddest, I guess, is for sure the TIAC AX10. And it's a box that is a delay, a sound on sound and stereo echo unit made by TIAC to go with their reel-to-reels. It's got an off, and it's got add 1 or add 2 stereo echo, and then a high and a low switch on the side, and a level. And it is wacky sounding, and I don't understand why it was made. It's a cool delay. I mean, it sounds neat, but it doesn't even look like it was made for a studio use. I do not understand like what the purpose of this unit was, or who it went to. I think
Maybe
that's
it was made for mixing Miles Davis albums in the early 70s.
yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe. I mean, but holy cow, I think it's just so sweet this stuff exists from these name brands.
Yeah.
Like
crazy stuff.
I don't know. I think it's so cool. It's so cool. But I think I don't know. I don't know what other oddities there are really. I mean, there's gates, there's the noise reduction, sure. The click and the pop one. What company was that? You said SAE?
SAE out of California.
Yeah, that I'm gonna want to hear one of those, because if it can do magic on playback of a vinyl, I wonder what it would sound like producing. like running a whole podcast through it for mouth clicks.
Apparently they were used very frequently in radio stations.
That would make sense.
Yeah, because
a lot of those clicks and pops going through the tower would hurt equipment.
Yeah, so they were very common there, where some of the, especially in colleges, where the vinyl wasn't in the best shape.
Right.
And this would kind of clean it up before it hit the air.
I think this would be the first episode that I would feel comfortable like calling out to the audience who's listening right now. Being like, what do you have that you find so intriguing and is so weird?
Yeah.
Because I would really like to know. Yeah, I'd like to know that. If you have something really wacky, please hit us up, because that stuff it's got so many cool uses.
Yeah, and it'll be a way to get Jeremy to buy something new.
I will hunt it down. I will hunt it down and find it.
Exactly.
Install it. Tell you guys why I don't like it.
That would be nice to set up like a monthly oddity budget. Like, okay, get ready, everybody. What are we voting on this month? Like, what's Jeremy putting into the system?
I'm in.
Should Jeremy buy this or this?
Count me in.
So, Eric, are there any topics within this episode that we have not covered that you would like to make sure we get to?
Well, yeah, I don't have a lot of oddities. I think my audio equipment is pretty mainstream. I do like the fact that what you see over my shoulder right there, the Dynaco ST70, can double as a heater. And that's one of the cool things about getting away from visuals and audio. And particularly since we got our first snow yesterday here in Calgary, and it's funny because I put it back into the system yesterday, and somebody messaged me on Instagram right after I posted a picture of it, and he said, "You know what? Winter is coming. I think I'm going to put my ST70 back into rotation."
Funny.
So that's the one oddity. The other oddity I have, it's not really vintage, but it can be hooked up to a vintage system because it has RCA ins and outs. And that is this little buddy here.
Which is for our audio listeners?
It's a piece of shit. It's the company is called Shit, and they make amplifiers and other equipment. A lot of the stuff started out in the headphone area. And now they make amplifiers and preamplifiers for home audio. They do tubes, they do solid state. But this is a headphone amplifier. It's very, very small. It cost me $99, and it sounds like stink, as in good stink. They also make a very, very good phono stage that, we were talking about turntables in the last episode. That will do MC for you on a budget. I think those run about $130, depending on whether you get a silver or a black one. And they also do, these are tiny, they stack. They also do a 4-band equalizer, which is kind of cool. So if somebody is wanting to get an equalizer into their system and they only have like treble and bass control on their stereo, and they want to kind of get a few more layers of equalization, they can do that too. So yeah, that's the only real kind of like oddities I have. And yeah, I hope
the
that
heater was funny.
Please don't cut that.
No, that's staying. I mean, I was laughing. I clipped. It's got to stay. That was so fun. I didn't expect you to say that.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm boring. Heaters and headphone amps. That's me.
Jeremy, there was I think there might have been one that you wanted to touch on before we wrap as well.
Yeah, I think the one that gets the most interest in the main rec is the audio scope. And what the audio scope is it's an it's an oscilloscope for home audio. Can you use a normal oscilloscope? Most likely, yeah, but this makes it nice and easy with an RCA in and out. and it allows you to monitor channels to see visually the left and right channel. But I think the coolest thing, and the thing that people like the most, is the actual stereo version of it. So you can see the channel separation.
Mhm.
And in some of the music, it looks like scrambled eggs, but in others it looks just incredible. Like they are solid, slow moving lines that kind of wrap around each other. Pink Floyd, Radiohead.
Yeah.
Radiohead uses a mix of mono and stereo in some of their songs, so you can actually not only hear it, but you can visually see the mono lines across the screen mixed in with the actual whole little screen filling in. Moran's made these. Macintosh made these. Heathkit
Mhm.
made these. Kenwood did. And then I think Panasonic Techniques. They all have. Most of them are 2-channel, but they also made 4-channel versions of it. They're starting to be quite collectible now because they are just neat to look at. So those are that's probably the oddity that I like the most, and I don't see myself not having one ever.
I think one of the other really cool tools, I guess, or like reasons to have one of those in the system, is that you can check, like, okay, is the phase off because it's the record, or did I mix up my left and right plugs on my speaker?
Yeah.
And so it can save you some hassle and some headaches from, like, am I hearing this? Or is it something I hooked up incorrectly, or is the music just like a little odd right now? And I think that that's helpful to dissect some stuff.
Yeah, very, very much so, and very helpful on on vintage, because some of the equipment is aging, and you may have a capacitor issue on left or right, and it may not be night and day, as in it's functioning or it's not. It just may be a little bit quieter. And
Right. Yes, absolutely.
something that you can just tweak with the balance knob, or something that you may want to say, okay, this is bad enough. Let's get it sorted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can see sometimes you can see your system, or you can see components failing before you can hear them failing.
Yeah.
And so that's a good, get it into the tech early, preventative maintenance, folks. But yeah, that's those are really, really neat pieces. So I think in this conversation we just about this was a fun one. This was a good one. Yeah, I think that Eric, you're good.
Yeah, I'm good.
Jeremy, you're good.
I am.
All right, this has been the Oddities episode, and hit us up, because I would like to know what you have that I've never heard of before. Putting it into the chain anywhere is fun to do, and there's just so much out there. But yeah, thank you all for listening. This has been this episode of the Vintage Series eCoustics podcast. I've been your moderator, Mitch Anderson from Black Circle Radio, and our hosts, Jeremy Sikora, Budget Audio Filer, and Eric Pye at Audio Love YYC. Nice episode, guys. And remember to subscribe, share, comment, and we'll see you soon.